Good evening. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and thank you for joining me on this edition of Technology Access Television. Well, it's that time when Chicago comes alive, and we really get a chance to come out our cubbyholes and see what's going on in this great, diverse, and cultural mecca we call Chicago. And you know, it takes people of a unique capability to kind of bring us out of some of our confined areas and explore, find out what Chicago is all about. You know, not only in our city, but around the world, Chicago has made an impression culturally, and that cultural diversity is alive and well in the arts. But many of us need a guide to figure out how to navigate this very exciting and exploratory terrain. My guest today is one of those individuals who is such a gumbo of skills of arts and creativity and communications as she brings it all together so that we might experience a better quality of life, knowing more about each other, being more aware of the arts and the creative elements that spur our very souls. It takes someone of a unique skill set, and I'm glad to have her, you know, off of her world travels just for a moment to give us some insights on what she's up to right now. My friend that's here today is Janice Bond, and I want to thank Janice for stopping by the studio. Janice, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Bruce.
Well, it really is true. I had to put out a warrant to pull you over and have an officer say, ma'am, you're wanted.
Oh, come on.
you need, but you've been such a burst of energy on the Chicago scene ever since you arrived. And some people think that, well, she must be from here as much as she's everywhere that we go.
No.
But you're not actually a Chicagoan. How did you end up in Chicago?
No, I'm actually not a Chicagoan as much as I love Chicago and Chicago is home. I'm a Texan. Believe it or not, I am from Houston, Texas. That is where I was born and mostly raised. My father and mother both still live there, along with my biological grandparents. So, yep, I'm a Texan through and through. The short version is, I actually came to Chicago after my first visit in 2000, I believe 2006. I was still in college, and I was just thinking, like, you know, why not Chicago? You know, I was a little exhausted with New York, and, you know, Houston wasn't really, as someone that was really moving forward as far as like marketing communications and building my own business. I didn't see Houston as being a market that was able to support my entrepreneurial ambitions. And when I came to Chicago, there was just something about the energy here and the people here. I mean, in 7 days, I found an apartment, I found a college, and I got a job.
Wow, that's a pretty good week.
At NBC. And so, at NBC no less. And so that week before I left, I called my mom and I was like, I guess I'm moving to Chicago.
Okay.
You know?
And you were really just kind of visiting or passing through, but...
Well, I wanted to see, because I'm a firm believer, and I think that this is carried over into my work in my business alongside artists or any corporate clients, or just in general. I'm a very firm believer of constantly evaluating, not so much self-criticism, but more evaluation. Evaluating and then also recalibrating when necessary. I think it's sometimes the most challenging position that we can be in as individuals, as well as entrepreneurs, as well as parents, as well as whatever have you. But it's the most powerful space if you interact with it honestly. So it was really, I was at a time, I was in college, had a job, my apartment
Now,
was
what was
paid
that
for.
college?
At that time, I was at Houston Baptist University, and I was on my way to transferring to audit some courses over at Columbia University in New York.
Okay.
And so it was really this big thing of, do I stay in New York? Do I stay in Houston? You know, which semester I'm going to do which. And then on top of that, 6 months before I moved to Chicago, I became a mom. And so that was obviously a huge transition also. You know, I'm in college, you know, I'm dabbling in business as a contractor, you know, straight out of high school for integrated marketing communications with, you know, multicultural markets and collegiate, doing student tours during the summer. But now I'm about to be a mom. And, you know, I'm getting towards the end of my collegiate years and needing to figure out what is next. And it had to be a bit more focused on a particular market, at least in the beginning, to take root for obvious reason. So Chicago wasn't oversaturated. I still saw so much room for growth. And when things were just kind of in a space of just like, hey, you know, this works, this works, this works. And I'm meeting people that, you know, look like me, that are entrepreneurs, that are women, that are people of color, that are not, that are from different countries, that are from different states. And then the rich history of Chicago itself is just actually really inspiring. The more that I learn about it, I knew that it was a space that I wanted to be to create.
Now I think, speaking of that, we kind of met, I think, through a Bronzeville connection, and
Yeah, we did.
And so your research kind of drew you to that rich history of this place we call Bronzeville, and you kind of knew about that, and that fascinated you to some extent.
Funny story. I actually live there now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, and no, I actually I live in a beautiful Greystone in Bronzeville now,
good.
and I think it was built in the 1800s. It's outside my door. I think it's 1881. But there are so many beautiful spaces in that area. But yeah, Chicago has such rich history. Actually, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the app Uber. And so one of my favorite Uber drivers is Gersh.
Okay.
No, I have a favorite Uber driver. His name is Gersh. And he actually used to be a private driver for Dr. Margaret Burroughs. And so imagine riding with this guy. I just rode with him
Like
again.
a tour guide all
Yes,
the time.
absolutely. He knows. I put him on Instagram yesterday. He knows more about Chicago. He got his first license in 1961,
Wow.
like as a driver and things
Yes.
like that. And he's about to retire next year. But every street, every block. Yesterday's conversation was about everything from lost Chicago accents to the Chicago Fire to chess records. I mean, this isn't a drive to Whole Foods.
Well, let's talk about your journey as an entrepreneur. It sounds like you had the entrepreneur bug pretty early, because it seems like you've always been kind of up to something in terms of being creative. So how did you come here to Chicago, get your college and work experience, and then land on your feet as an entrepreneur? What made you decide to take the entrepreneurial route as a way of engaging this passion for arts and culture, but also this skill and awareness of what was going on with social media and technology?
Well, when I started right outside of high school, I actually was a student tour operator. And so I did a lot of collegiate marketing pre-Facebook, which I think was really good for me. And I use that now because technology is great, but I do understand the old school grassroots way of getting people to a location or to communicate a certain message to them, and also getting information and feedback. So I started out with student tours and promotions and special events right out of high school and in college for a couple of years. And from that point, like I said, you know, when I was making the transition to Chicago, when I came to work at NBC, it was in collegiate marketing and promotions and audience. So I was working with a couple of shows at NBC for that reason, but then I was also a contractor and a student ambassador for a marketing company based in New York. And so I was responsible for promoting different brands on campus, getting teams together, sending images, and actually managing those teams for different brands. I mean, anything from JetBlue to, I mean, you name it. There was a couple of them, but it was
So
food
you were
and beverage.
kind of working, going to school,
Absolutely.
Moonlighting. You had about 5 or 6
I was always, let me tell you something about me. I've always done several things at once. When I was 15, I remember I got a job as a swim instructor. And my dad could not understand for the life of me why in Houston, Texas, someone who needs no tan would sit out in the sun for 8 hours, you know. But what he didn't understand at the time, until I revealed it to him, is that one, I get time and a half for pool parties, 2, time and a half plus for water aerobics and also swim lessons. And so I started really beyond that, even beyond that, I always had like jobs and little things and selling lanyards and candy at school. That was just always my thing. But I always looked at jobs have a space. They always have a space. And your business is your job. But if you're looking at long term, I always saw jobs as, and still do, see it as when people have jobs, if it's not part of their final career move or part of their big picture, then a job is really an investment in whatever you really feel that you're here to do, which is why you shouldn't neglect that. But you also shouldn't neglect your job and say you hate your job and so forth and so on, because especially if it's paying for you and enabling you to do the things that you're doing now, maintaining a life now, then either A, you look at it as an investment in the future of what your next space is going to be, B, make it directly contribute to that, or C, do something else. So I always looked for, even within the lifeguarding job, I was like, okay, I can start my own swim lessons, business, or teach water aerobics, and then I became a nanny. But fast forward to Chicago, once I realized that I couldn't do as much of the travel for the student touring and different things like that, I wanted to look for different ways for me to utilize the skills that I learned as far as like engagement and events with brands and that understanding of like strategic turnout for target markets, whether it's multicultural or not, whether it's collegiate or not. I started to really understand that how to listen and how to engage specific types of markets as opposed to just, or in addition to, the general population. And I knew that that would be of value at some point.
So when did this social media, because you are widely, when people think of the brand Janice Bond, immediately say, oh yeah, that's that social media person. That's that person that's always tweeting or putting something on Facebook or helping messages move from these different platforms.
When did that come about?
When did this become a part of your key arsenal, was to bring, along with that marketing and engagement, really to jump on the social media bandwagon and make that another one of your key tools?
Watching people. I was looking for a space as an entrepreneur that, as far as key results, it was a lower impact and a higher return. I knew that the way that people were going as far as communications, because it's not about what you want to put out there, it's really about how people want to receive information and what works best for them. And I started to notice that people across the board needed it faster, quicker, and even though there were true skeptics of MySpace and it was, really weird and Facebook was just coming onto the scene, I knew that these tools that we were using to entertain ourselves, businesses were going to need to use them to sell, because that's how people were being engaged. The lines between branding and entertainment and communication, it was really starting to blur to where, of course, as of now, it's pretty much all one thing. So I started at that point just really refining my own skills and just practicing and playing around. And believe it or not, I was sitting in bed. My first contract, actually, my first corporate contract, I was literally sitting in bed. A friend of mine had went on a job interview with an agency and brought my name up and said that, I was doing a lot of different interesting creative things. I understood markets. I understood things that were, not so in vogue, like Skype and webinars and all of the other stuff, and a real practical application. And that's a really important part of this. There are a lot of people that understand the same tools that I do, understand the same platforms, understand how to produce or create strategy, know how to manage teams, but the issue that they have is that you have to help people or work alongside them to start where they are. Just because you've been working in technology for the greater part of 10 years, it doesn't mean that you know any more or they know any less. You are now in a space of a technical common denominator. And I know that a lot of people in technology have a really difficult time functioning that way. And I think that that's where the blend of creative and technology came in, because my sensitivity to individuals in general, as far as where they are in their space of education for technology, allowed me to really authentically start from wherever they are and help them build out or improve or create exactly what they were looking for as in regards to technology. So I received phone calls, and then actually the best marketing, I think, is to just do a good job, and so the referrals just started going from there.
Now, one of the communities that you gravitated to was the artist community. you reached out, and I guess either because of your own personal preference, befriended folks in the arts, sculptors, filmmakers, painters, musicians, and you probably noticed what a lot of us have noticed, but you decided to do something about it, that these individuals are individuals who need help as well. They may be phenomenal talents,
Right.
but their marketing skills and business skills should not be an impediment to them getting out their wonderful craft, getting out their art, getting out their spirit to the broader world. So how was that connection formalized for you, where you started to say, I am going to slow down off the corporate jet set for just a minute and give something back to this audience as well, give something back to this community and help them engage in a way that could advance their goals?
Well, I'll tell you something. When someone is looking to identify a particular space and time, say they're on an archaeological dig or something, you don't use financial records to identify the Ming Dynasty. I mean, you're looking at pottery, textiles, musical instruments, culinary arts, food, things of that nature, wall carvings. You get the idea. Art and culture is the basis of which all communication is set. I mean, that is the platform. Our computers are art. Our phones, our cases, the colors, all of that is some form of art. And the technology and art and communication cycle is a spiral that just continues, and they all shape each other. And so the interesting thing about artists, now the whole thing was I was really enjoying, and still do enjoy, my work with my corporate clients. As an entrepreneur, again, I always go back to recalibration as well as self-evaluation. And I knew that there were friends, there were people that I knew, and there was this space that truly, outside of not what can you do, but why you do what you do, is really important to me. And I love the arts. My daughter is 7 years old, and she's very much an artist.
Mm-hmm.
I love what artists do and what they contribute to society. And I saw this space where there's just all this, not just talent and opportunity, because the world isn't short of talent, but I'm talking about real individuals that have prolific, ideas and thoughts and products and goals, but they're just unable to really attach to this new model that's become of the industry rapidly, their respective industries rapidly. There wasn't really a lot of time for evolution of the mind. Like, you either are into technology or you are not making any money, because who can really, especially when you start talking about when it really started to come into play, if you're talking about 2007, 2008, I mean, if you were a jewelry or a retail fashion designer or whatever have you, you can have the best designs in the world, but you needed to have the lowest overhead possible, because your benchmarks as far as sales needed to be able to be a bit flexible considering what was going on with the economy at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just saw this space and I said, as an experiment, I wonder how well the application of my traditional marketing strategies is, and by that point I was moving out away from just technical implementation and marketing, like implementation and project management, into strategy. So managing project teams, different things like that. And so I was like, I wonder if strategic planning and development, how that would work with independent artists and or creative institutions, because they would need it just as well. I mean, just because they're artists, it is a business. I mean, I go into a store and I buy creative things. And
right.
Yeah, so it started out as just a test, and within a year and a half, it became 80% of my income. And there were artists, I would say it was so amazing, and still is now, just the doors being open, like globally, to see that this is a true need for that information to be accessible to those artists.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think, your whole story of, coming from Houston, going to New York, coming to Chicago, but that has not stopped your movement in this space
Yeah.
to be where you need to be to engage the clients you need to be to get the word out. So now these platforms are in fact creating global opportunities.
Right.
And so your commitment to this audience and this community and these skills have taken you not only around Michigan Avenue or around Bronzeville, but you talked about going to Poland, you talked about going to France, you talk about this kind. So now you're a part of a global experience shift, a global paradigm shift, where artists and voices and cultures globally are adopting this world community and are coming together both virtually and in real time to have these kinds of experiences. And so talk a little bit about it. You've got a couple of projects which are very exciting. One is this great, I saw you last summer launching this new magazine, Globetrotter magazine, and that's just a phenomenal. Is that the name of the magazine?
Yeah, it's Globetrotter. I'm actually the marketing director for Globetrotter magazine.
Okay.
The publisher is Kennedy Ashinze. He's actually based here in Chicago. And I love it. I love it. I don't touch anything I don't love these days.
Okay.
And I'm so happy to be in that space. But it's a global art, design, fashion and culture magazine, and I know that those are a lot of buzzwords these days.
And is there a website that people can go to?
Yeah, globetrottermag.com.
Globetrottermag.com. And does it have some of the same beautiful images and some of the stuff that's in the publication?
And the first issue we dubbed as the Maiden Voyage. Had Nneka on the cover, a Nigerian, amazing artist. We had Delphine Diallo, a collagist and photographer from Senegal. We feature local retailers like the Silver Room and what they're doing, local artists, global local artists, such as Slang, Shivani, there's just so much. The beautiful thing about Globetrotter is that when you look at that magazine and when you look at the content, sometimes it's difficult to believe that so many of those people that are in that publication are right here in Chicago. It looks like and feels like anywhere in the world, but you know what? That's Chicago. You can walk down the streets, or you could be sitting in the room with a couple of people from who knows where, right here in this city. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about it.
Now, also, you made a shift to also say, well, I've been successful. I've been had fun as hanging out my own shingle and now being recognized as competent in this area. But there's still some unleft work to do in terms of community, in terms of what happens with the young people. So now you're putting your bags by the door a little bit and saying, I'm going to hunker down and I'm going to do something in the community. And so now you're a part of opening a community technology art center right in the heart of the southwest side of Chicago. Talk about what that's going to do for both you and the young people in the programming.
So wonderful.
What's the name of it now?
Actually, it is the Iman Youth Arts and Wellness Center.
Okay.
And I am now, or have been for the past couple of months, after a wonderful experience having them as a client. I'm the Director of Arts and Culture at Inner City Muslim Action Network, based in Chicago, Illinois, near 63rd in California.
Right.
And across the street from our headquarters, again, we just recently opened a Youth Arts and Wellness Center. And the beautiful thing about it, I've had a lot of offers from different spaces for jobs and things like that over the years, but there was something about this organization, and even working with them, as much as our programming, like for example, we have this amazing festival this summer, taking it to the streets. We have Black Stars, the headliner, Talib Kweli, Alicia
right
Muhammad.
Out in front of the...
right there in Marquette Park. We have Yuna, Vo Fakature, Brother Ali. We are about to have a blast this summer, June 15th.
Okay.
And I'm so excited about that. And we have all this programming throughout the year, community cafes. But you know what? All of that is really just a pipeline and a vessel by which, as it pertains to arts and culture, to continue to engage the community and show possibility and bring people together, intergenerational, intercultural, and make space. I think, and with this center that's across the street, there's a computer lab that's managed by the community outreach director, Shamar Hemphill, and we're actually partnering with certain organizations and groups such as Impact America to get some of the programming done from professionals and things of that nature. We're really working with individuals to, again, open up the ideas and possibilities of the youth, because they walk past that building every day, that empty, before we remodeled it, they were walking past it for years.
I believe that.
You know, but now they have a space that they can take ownership of that is beautiful, where they can create, where they can share ideas in a safe space. They don't have to go anywhere else to do it. They can do it right there in their neighborhood.
Community.
And that's important, because that shifts the concept of values. So I'm so, you were talking about it.
Right.
I'm excited to be a part of it and do my part.
Only Janice Bond can bring us full circle to talk about getting her start as an entrepreneur, coming to a new city, traveling the world on behalf of clients, and now connecting our youth to this exciting world of arts and culture and digital media and neighborhood-based computer labs. Yes, it is possible to have your cake, your life, your quality of life, and to eat it too. I want to thank my guest, Janice. If you want to find out more about her, I guarantee you that you can go almost any digital platform and Google Janice Bond, and you will find some amazing things that she is connected to. Hey, if you want to find out more about what's going on, please don't hesitate to look us up. You'll find some information on our website about her work. You'll find some information about how you can enjoy this tremendously diverse and creative city right here on Technology Access Television. We'll see you next time.